because I
Okay.
don't want to be like.
Hello, friends. How are you, everybody? Nicholas Chamberas is with us. We, without any coordination, came out very black and white, but it doesn't mean our mood is something that is not optimistic. Nick, morning in America.
It absolutely is. Good morning, Yuri. Congratulations. Congratulations, America. Congratulations, Yuri. We did it. I feel great. I'm so excited. Words cannot describe.
I was effusive mostly in Russian. I mean, exclusively in Russian because it was so important to my audience, to my core audience, which is spread all over this country, all over the world. And I'm proud to acknowledge that, just to state the fact that we grow by leaps and bounds. And last 7 days brought me about 1,000 new subscribers, which is a new kind of benchmark for this channel. It's not very huge channel, but it unites a certain kind of people. We are, excuse me for borrowing from dirty hands this phrase, but when we fight, we win. Some people do not win when they fight, or they don't
It's
fight, or they're not people. I don't know what's the story. They tell me.
Yuri, it's not huge yet, but I cannot tell you how much my non-Russian speaking friends they tune into your channel even when I'm not on. Not all of them. Some of them, like I have a friend in Florida. He's new to Twitter and he's reposting your stuff, and I'm like, but do you speak Russian? I don't know. And your show is growing by leaps and bounds because you have great guests on. You have a really good connection, not just with your guests, but with your viewers and your listeners. And you're fair and you're not obnoxious, but you're passionate. And I'm looking forward to your show growing even more because it's grown tremendously over the last year.
Nick,
It's such
I
a joy to be on.
respectfully disagree. I must be obnoxious because I come out yesterday. I came out 5 times. I did 5 programs all of a sudden because everybody wanted to know my very informed opinion on the very important subject for the rest of the world, which is and the world altogether. It's the elections. So were you surprised, my friend? How did you feel when it all went down? I just to numb myself, I went to work for the voters, voting site, and I manned the scanner. I was sort of driving a tank in this battle. So that's a very specific part because it may come as a surprise to many, but the ballots sometimes they don't go in from the first go, and they spat back, and people say, "What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it?" I have to look at people's votes to tell them what's going on, what they did wrong. Because I got to look at the marks, I got to look at the accuracy of the filling in the oval, and all this thing that is called circle by everybody, but it's an oval. So there's certain degree of precision, but I couldn't help but noticing this time that the machine was kind of attuned to looser restrictions, and there was large ovals sometimes being there. Excuse my technical kind of approach, but it's just the witness from the front lines, so to speak. And the turnout was not incredibly huge where I was, but it was huge in more dense Russian areas like Brighton Beach. I'm in Shipshead Bay. In Brighton Beach, they said the line went all the way from Seabreeze, JCC to where the site is, and up to Tatiana Restaurant, which is the most populated place by those who come from afar, from the tourists to Brighton Beach. It's like the crown jewel of the trip that they make. But it doesn't matter. Now we talk about the election. So what won Donald Trump the election this time?
Well, I can tell you, you might find it funny the one moment that I was unsure, but if we go back, I predicted when everyone was crazed with some other primary candidates against Donald Trump, and they thought it was the new big thing, et cetera. And I think on your show as well, well before any votes were cast in Iowa, I predicted a huge Donald Trump landslide in the primaries. I said it's not going to be close, folks. You can even go back to your show and you could look at the clip, and I was very sure. And on your show as well as other places, other forums, and in writing as well, in my columns, by the late spring and early summer, more in early summer, and even when the polls showed Kamala Harris up big time, well, not big time, but up, I was more confident of a Trump landslide than ever. And I said it. I said it's going to be a landslide. I did have irrational exuberance, and if anyone knows me, they know I'm not exactly. I wouldn't say that I'm not an optimist, but let's just say most people would not describe me as optimistic. I don't think, not Pollyannish. And I didn't, I thought it might be even bigger. I thought that maybe, just maybe, this might be like Ronald Reagan in 1984. I didn't predict that, but I said, you know what? If things go right, it might. The funny thing is that even after the MSG event, which was great overall, the MSG event was fantastic. It was a great idea. It was very well done. But we had
you mean MAGA Square Garden, right?
Yeah, exactly. We had that unfortunate joke, which I didn't think was funny, and I don't think it was appropriate. I don't want to upset anybody, but what that joke and some other jokes and some of the things that some other speakers early on said, they have no business in a political rally. I mean, you're just trying to shoot yourself in the foot. And my phone was blowing up from Hispanic Republicans and Hispanic Trump supporters and other people. They were just like, how could they do this? Well, I'm like, I'm not, it's not like I'm in charge of this. And some people from political elected officials were contacting me saying, oh my goodness, this is really bad. And
all of a sudden they woke up. All the politicians woke up.
This is just, this might cost us the elections. And it's funny. I was a little concerned, but I said, look, if somebody else had said these things, fine, you could make an issue out of it. I was not worried at all with that. That's the ironic part. I was not worried with that. And I said, we're still winning in a landslide. I was pumped. I was convinced. And then Saturday afternoon, of all the things that momentarily spooked me, it was that Iowa poll by, I think first name is Ann. I know it's Ms. Seltzer is the last name. Ann Seltzer, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Did you see that poll that had Donald Trump losing by 3 in Iowa?
Listen, there was something I think about New Hampshire where some other state maybe where they showed the big jump too. Yeah, Iowa, of course, but there was a couple of markers that turned out to be totally fake.
Right, and I actually wrote about in Newsmax. I wrote about do not be surprised a few days before the election, a week before the election, if they come out with these fake polls from liberal-leaning outlets. What spooked me about this race was the pollster, yes, a leftist, a liberal, but a well-respected pollster, not as accurate. Some people like, MSNBC made her the gold standard and that she was never wrong. But a very well-respected pollster. And I panicked for all of 5 minutes. I said, could we be deluding ourselves? Because throughout this campaign, my fear was that, remember what was it in 1972, that famous celebrity said, I don't know how Richard Nixon won. I don't know a single person who voted for him. And I was, deep down, I was just like, could this possibly be? I mean, even if it's tied in Iowa, every other poll has Donald Trump up by 10. She wouldn't release the crosstabs at first, which was a huge red flag. And then I looked at the crosstabs, and yeah, her number one issue in the poll was threat to democracy. That was like a sedative, a tranquilizer. I calmed down immediately. Let me tell you, people, like folks, no, I don't care unless you're making $5 million and you're on The View or something. Your number one issue in this race, even if you hate Donald Trump, is not truly the threat to democracy. So after that, I said, we're solid, we're gonna win. And again, not looking for a medal or a pat on the back, but I was very consistent that this is going to be a landslide. And I even mentioned that we could probably win the popular vote. And I'd like to thank the Democrats for making it so easy for us. Please keep talking about abortion. That's great. I think what happened, well, the Democrats lost for a lot of reasons, but first, let's give the credit where credit is due. Donald Trump is a rare person in American history. He was made for this time. He was made for these monsters, because I'm sorry, they conducted themselves, not just in government, but in campaigning. They conducted themselves opprobriously, disgustingly. He was the only one, I was convinced, in this country who could deal with them, who could take them on and win convincingly, because we needed a convincing win. So we need to give credit to President Trump. His campaign team, amazing. Just a great effort. 2016 was a great effort. This is going to be studied hopefully by Republican political strategists for many decades to come. 2004, I know some people might feel iffy, but I've also got to say Karl Rove's defense in 2004 was amazing. A lot of people don't get the parallels, but back then the media was also in the tank. The mainstream media was also in the tank for John Kerry, and Republicans didn't have social media to rebut it. So that was a great effort. But when you consider the incredible effort put forth by this legacy media, the vicious, dishonest attacks, I also think it helps a lot of political scientists. There's a debate in the literature about how informed American voters are. I think this goes to show that most American voters are more informed than the average voter in the rest of the world. If you hear some of the things and you don't take time to debunk them or research them yourselves, like I'm sure you heard about the Liz Cheney, the execution. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, see, thank God a lot of people didn't hear about these comments. Did you see that part?
Oh, you mean that when he said that 9 barrels are looking at you and try to make
Right.
make somebody go to war? This, of course, Donald Trump withstood lawfare, media fair, poll fair, and I don't know what fair. This period, all those new words that formed it like huge, like kinds of army. Army functions, military functions against him, attacks against him. That was one of the most despicable. They all were, actually. There was not one single worthy argument against him. How about that? One single worthy argument. And I'm pretty kind of even-handed about it. When I see something, I got, like you just said, the numbers in Iowa. All of a sudden, you go, you investigate, you confirm, or you disconfirm, right? That's how
Yeah.
we are. We check everything.
What about the media? How could they possibly repeat? I mean, I don't want to sound like them where they're saying that they need to stop, there needs to be laws about misinformation, et cetera, et cetera. But just from a human perspective, there's got to be a way to rein in these crazy people when they're calling themselves news shows. Because if you listen to the comments, or if you watch the comments, he's clearly talking about giving her a gun and having her go to war. I mean, when did you ever hear about giving somebody who's supposed to be executed? When did you ever hear about giving them a gun? It's just so preposterous, but they cling to everything happily and gladly. And it's frightening because a lot of people don't have time to investigate these things. And I think this time they really got so carried away. But this is going to be remembered. This is a case of where the good guys won. It doesn't always happen. It's like a classic Hollywood ending where the real good guys won. The Democrats ran the most negative, divisive, and ugly presidential political campaign in history, and it's not even close. They showed no reserve, restraint. How many times did they have to call him a Nazi and a fascist? And did anybody, I mean, I'd love to know what their polling was like, what their numbers were. Did they really think this stuff was working? I just don't understand.
Listen, Fox News, with all the disagreements that the conservatives and Republicans may have with this outfit, they still the leaders. So everybody else, like MSNBC, what's the business model? They cater to somebody. They don't cater to those who want to know what's going on. You look at the programs; they don't nurture what they love so much, the diversity of opinion. They push through they ram through their own agenda, and they behave like they're from a movie about the like Oliver, from British what they call workhouses, right? It was not like it was in reality, but they behave like they're the mentoring people, and in 5 minutes, anybody, even someone who's come from a different culture with different observation skills, which are not superior to American observation skills, of course, but we read people differently. We don't have the uh, inherent, say, respect for a rational foundation of Western culture, etc., etc. But we just see somebody through, and we see that this person is lying. Just it took me so long to get to this point. It's just we don't have this kind of deference to the whatever authority this guy's on screen and I'm not, and too many people got on screen in the last 5-10 years, right? All those channels like this one. We learned about other ways of getting information. But let me ask you this: speaking of predictions, there's a fellow called Alan Lichtman, who's never was wrong. He was once wrong, like every predictor. Now he has two wrongs under his belt, and he just announced that he takes very solemnly. I don't know what happened to my keys. He has those keys by which he determines the results. Very scientific, but something is wrong with that. And I take 48 hours just to shut up and think and meditate and maybe come back later on and continue predicting whatever I was predicting. But I spent some time because a lot of people asked me, a lot of people here are bilingual, and they asked me, what about the predictions of Alan Lichtman? Of course, they asked me about it before the elections. Now nobody cares except myself and let other people busy thinking about it. So, Alan Lichtman, what do you think about his predictions and his stellar record in this field?
Well, I come from a school that was recognized while I was studying there as being one of the top political science schools in the world. And I spent enormous time studying not just voting behavior, but political behavior. And I read many of Professor Lichtman's articles back then in American Political Journal, Political Science, American Political Science Review. A lot of political science professors,
Hmm.
they like to be empirical. Obviously, you have to be. They're numbers people, but the mistake they make is there's really no formula to predict a presidential election. There are too many variables to account for. I remember having an argument when I was an undergraduate with a professor because he was making fun of Rush Limbaugh because some other political science professor um, made fun of the idea that voting matters. And he said, the idea that one vote is going to settle an election is preposterous. And how dare Rush Limbaugh criticize this person? Guess what? Elections have been decided by one vote. Elections have been decided by 3 votes, 5 votes. If you go back in the 90s, I believe a Congressman John Fox um, from Montgomery County in Pennsylvania, he won by 3 votes. and then he lost by a couple of votes, if memory serves me correctly. We have assembly races in the state of New York that are decided by a few votes. So not disrespecting Professor Lichtman, but we disagree. There's no formula to predict an election. And if anything proves it, it's that he's been wrong 2 times now. Donald Trump, nobody thought, no one in the bubble thought President Trump would win in 2015, right? But he did. So I'm a very big proponent of funded research in political science, across all disciplines in the field of political science. But all this nonsense with the betting markets and this and that, no. Let's focus on getting polling right, on getting polling more accurate and better. And sadly, this time, I don't have any direct evidence of this, but I think pollsters were putting their hand on the scale or the foot on the scale, right, with the polling. I think the private results of the polling were
somebody parts. Let's put it this way.
Atlas Intel got it right, and Atlas Intel had the problem. Now I've encountered this problem. On behalf of candidates, I've tried approaching, these so-called low propensity Trump voters. They do not answer the phone. And if in the rare occurrence occasion they answer the phone, they don't want to speak to you about politics.
I see research on my phone screen. I don't talk to them.
Right.
I went with one research because they promised $20. It was funded by the study of anti-Semitism, and it was somewhere in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I sent them I saw the address where they're located, so I answered the questions honestly, and I was expecting my check, and check never came. And it was kind of something city research or something. And they called next time. They said, "Would you participate?" I said, "Yeah, I would, but I'm interested how the previous one ended." Oh, we ran out of money before we
Interesting.
So that's some business, right?
Right. I mean, these pollsters, I don't know, because Atlas Intel came close. Some other ones, I think, to their credit, Emerson seemed pretty honest. But the NPR poll that had Harris up by 4 and easily winning the states. What was the CNN poll? What they had her up by 5 in Michigan and Pennsylvania? Come on, let's cut it out. Like,
people get insulted and then people forget. The people of Michigan and Pennsylvania is just. John Fetterman was terrified, senator from Pennsylvania. He said the Trump flags are everywhere, and there is a kind of medication, their pill for this, where they say it's all Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and something else. Allentown was an important part. And then that's it. The rest is voting for Trump. But now it's just a landslide indeed, and there is a major marker for the all previous elections, basically, that were on my time in this country. That is about over 25 years. 20. Yeah, well calculated later, like 27, I guess already. But that's the popular vote. The popular vote went for Donald Trump, and this must leave a mark. I'm sorry, this is really painful, and it was inflicted. And I don't know if they learned, but that would be a scar, seriously, because Hillary Clinton winning popular vote, that was the big argument against Donald Trump, and now they got nothing. He fought on 4 fronts, and he won all 4.
Great point, and I want to get to that. But before I forget, you mentioned Senator Fetterman.
Yeah.
And so I was having a debate with other consultants before the election. Mm-hmm. And I've been having this debate, unfortunately, for decades. Signs matter, flags matter. It's all about, like Elon Musk said, it has to do with social affirmation. Signs and campaigns are very important. Like former Senator Marty Golden, prolific in Southern Brooklyn and in the state, actually. I'm stealing this quote from him. He used to say, yes, signs don't vote, but they send a message. So all of you people out there who, you know, get signs. If you want a campaign, you need signs. You need people to put up your signs. It helps tremendously. And the Trump signs helped. Any candidate, you need signs. As for
My sign is still up. That's the only sign on the street. But but on Bedford Avenue, like a few minutes walk from me, there's a guy who's selling Trump swag. And I met the guy. He's famous for going to the baseball matches and games where he would unfurl the huge banner from up top, and he got into the news with this. And there was like Trump won in 2020, and now his house like 5 times a week is decorated with Trump huge flags. A very very quick response from him. The pictures from the trial where they're on the banners that he produced and offered online. So yeah, it's important to show your colors, and I think it was ingenious for Donald Trump when I was choosing the cap for this morning stream with you, Nick. Looked very carefully. I have a number of caps that I bought and that were gifted to me by viewers and friends, etc. I have this is let me give you this. Let me give you a little tour. This is the cap that started it for me.
wow.
I bought it. It lost the color. The color was the same. I bought the label. I saw this cap in Nordstrom rack for $5, and it's nice. It's by Oakley. Oakley is very fancy. All cotton. I thought that on my head, the trucker hat doesn't sit quite well. That was my thinking. So I bought this one, and it lost the color in my travels to January 6th event. Let's call it this way, and subsequent adventures across the globe, shall I say. And then this one was sent to me from Texas. Very nice.
Nice, yes.
Baseball variety, not the trucker variety. And it sits well, and that's my favorite. And this one is gaining the ground, and basically it worked like this. This came from Queens, from the listeners in Queens. So this is the... Oh, I have more. I have to stand up. Okay. So this one, it was not. This is a friend's gift, and it was on January 6th. It was in Washington. This cap, and then what? The one on me bought was honestly earned money in Trump Tower store a couple of months ago. So that's paid full price. Didn't look for anything. Any say.
Hopefully now, we can get to a point in society where Americans, no matter where they live, don't have to worry about expressing themselves politically. And no one would try to justify assaulting someone based on wearing a hat supporting a legitimate political leader. I find it so disgusting and despicable, those videos you see online where they're attacking Trump supporters for wearing a hat. And it's usually some young guy attacking somebody over 80, and for some reason they think it's cool to post it.
Yeah, and the conversation sometimes starts with a brick in the head.
Right. Unfortunately,
and then the questions.
It's disgusting, but it's important. It's important for social affirmation. There's a lot of peer pressure, a lot of social pressure, and I remember first starting out. I said many years ago, initially I was skeptical of President Trump, not because of his ideas, but because I said, doesn't this man know what will happen to him if he tries to implement this? And, if you think about it, back then, it was just so much easier to support someone else, right? It was just like you didn't have that burden. But then you see other people who you respect and you are intelligent. They're out there with the Trump t-shirt, Trump hat. There's a chain reaction. So it's very important to stop this nonsensical stigma about supporting President Trump, no matter what part of the country you live in. And getting to your point about the Democrats having no choice, I don't know if I don't know how much of a leftist Kamala Harris really is. Of course, her voting record is to the left of Bernie Sanders when she was in the Senate. She said some outrageous things, but she's always been, no other way to say it, she's always been politically opportunistic and a
Yeah, to
pragmatist.
put it mildly.
Yeah, and I think they needed the mainstream. They needed the mainstream media so much this time to carry their water and to apologize for them, to explain for them, to let them get away with these outrageous attacks. That, in light of the fact that mainstream media is owned by the woke progressive agenda, I think they were terrified to try to pivot to the mainstream or the center. And the best example that I can think of off the top of my head is Kamala Harris skipping the Al Smith dinner. I can't believe that she skipped the dinner and then thought it was okay just to send in that silly video. It was a terrible mistake. And then they put this interesting leak out there that Kamala Harris was incensed with her campaign manager for deciding to keep her away from the dinner. Nonsense. I don't believe that Kamala Harris's campaign manager or campaign team for a minute did not want her to go. I don't believe for a minute that Kamala Harris did not want to go. I really think they were terrified of their woke progressive donors and benefactors blocking them. I don't think they had a choice. I think they were so terrified of losing their support, alienating them, that they made this colossal failure, and I'm quite happy for the failure. Yes.
It's my time to disagree with you. Don't you think people who supported her financially the most were not aware of her bird brain? No one's talking to the birds watching this program.
So, look, we give politicians.
Everybody knew she's an idiot. That she got along by opening her mouth either to laugh or say something stupid, and that was it. She was a product of I don't know, very rare confluence of events. I would say. I mean, the people who cannot be on the level of thinking or expressing themselves are not so rare in our life, and sometimes we behave like this, but. In general, she's really outstanding for the level he has gone to, like candidate for president of the United States, with full inability to speak extemporaneously, to put together ideas. I was pretty much stunned by how they taught her not to laugh. I thought it was some waterboarding involved in stopping her. There was a period when she stopped laughing. When people behave like this, I can sit like this. I have certain tics. Just I cannot control it. But her tic was this laughter, her like terra firma that she would hold on to for her dear life. But they taught her to quit this natural instinct of her.
Yuri, the thing is, though, woke progressives in this country have an enormous amount of money. They have so many resources and capabilities, but their ideas are bat spit crazy. I don't want to curse on your channel, but their ideas are nuts. So they need to find candidates like Kamala Harris, because otherwise, do you think, let me ask you a question, do you think Joe Biden would have skipped the Al Smith dinner? No way.
No.
They need people like Vice President Harris, because they'll listen to them. They'll go along with them. They won't give them any pushback. And in exchange, they control the legacy media, the mainstream media, and they'll push these ridiculous, crazy lies. You can call them stories, just basically pre-manufactured lies, and they'll do their bidding for them. If they don't go along with their crazy woke agenda, they won't support them, they won't donate. So they have no choice. And that's why I think they like candidates like Kamala Harris. And I mean, again, that's why I'd love to see their polling. On what planet did they think supporting biological males in women's sports was going to move the needle for them in this election? On what planet? I don't understand. Yet they continue to defend these practices. And you can only get away, you can only get so far and get away with it for so long when, you know, you have a 13-year-old daughter who's 5'4" playing volleyball against a 15-year-old who's 200 pounds and 6'1". Um, and there have been some actually terrible accidents
Yeah.
with these situations. That's why I think she had no choice in the matter. She had to stick to this insane agenda or else, and that's what got her there. So, you know, Senator Vance talked about how he felt sorry for for Tim Walz. You could almost feel sorry for Kamala Harris because I guess she had no choice but to defend these crazy policies that the Biden and Harris administration was trying to normalize.
Yeah, Tim Walz, of course, the most pathetic figure in the U.S. politics for a while. I must say, he cannot defend anything he's accused of. He has no good explanation for anything. Why did he know how to operate a gun that he was so proud of to go hunting with? How come he didn't know that? I don't know the football terms, but I never was a coach. I can talk about tennis. I can talk about, I don't know, checkers. Uh, Come to mind, but no other games familiar to me more or less. But he's a coach, and he messed up the terms, which is like people who don't know in this country anything about sports, and there are some, but they still use sports terms to get the message across. And he was not familiar with that at all. He's a pretty kind of, he grew up in some sort of a controlled environment, and I don't know how he could not get himself out of basically any situation that he claimed he was in China, right, on Tiananmen Square in 1979, all those things, and his explanations were pathetic. And as for Kamala Harris, uh, she was in a very stupid bubble during the whole campaign, because her speechwriters, whoever was strategizing, and you, as a strategist, may give us all an insight how it goes, because they were all recycling from day one to day last. They recycled until yesterday when she came up with the concession speech at the Howard University. A sympathetic crowd. There were some crying faces, etc., but much more on TikTok because it's more convenient, and nobody can see the onion, right? That you keep handy for this purpose. But she was there, and she recycled. Still, they added some Hillary Clinton bits, and they used her own old bits that they wrote for her, with that were like almost intentionally unoriginal. And we know that we have great speechwriters. We have Stephen Miller, who wrote the inauguration speech for Donald Trump in 2017. There was fantastic speech. To me, it's one of the powerful things I ever heard. And I hope he's involved with the new speech for this January as well. And I think he is, because he became much more of a public person eventually, and he's on programs, etc., on Fox, and he spoke at the MAGA Square Garden. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
There's no garden, there's no square, and there was MAGA. It's round.
Yeah.
It used to be a garden, right? And there is a square, but that's true.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I just how come they came to this idea? Where did they get the idea that they should kick around like 7.5 ideas? Words, and make salad every time from the same ingredients, and expect a different result.
Well, I think the Obama strategists were way too involved in this campaign. It's very easy to get your message across effectively and persuasively when Mitt Romney is your opponent. Sorry, I just had to mention him. It's also very easy when all the social media back then, when Obama was running, were lockstep in support with him, and there was no debunking of all these hoaxes. So they thought that, again, they didn't look forward. They didn't make adjustments. They had to pivot to the center. There was no way around it. They didn't realize this. They thought they could get the legacy media to keep trashing President Trump, to keep spreading one ridiculous lie after another. they thought they would get enough people to sit home. This was a suppression campaign. That's why you saw them focus on Catholics and Christians and this fake organic movement about Christians who were staying home. Keep dreaming. If you thought that Christians, Catholics, particularly evangelicals, if you thought evangelicals were staying home in this election, you were out of your mind. And I know I've written about this. I mean, I know people know I've written about this, but evangelicals were not staying home. They didn't stay at home in 2016. They didn't stay at home in 2020. They sure as heck were not going to stay at home in 2024. And, initially they got these token pro-life figures to go out and attack President Trump without getting into the weeds about the abortion issue. If you care whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, where Kamala Harris stands on abortion. Kamala Harris, I think, was the first and only presidential candidate to visit an abortion clinic. So I'm happy that they thought the pro-lifers would stay out of this. I'm very, very happy that they thought that would happen. That was another mistake that they made. They were not prepared. I don't think they realized how unified Republicans were. And I don't think they expected such a disciplined campaign by Donald Trump. And what turned out to be their undoing. And I was surprised because, full disclosure, from what I understand, from the information I had at the time, the Trump ground game had a rocky start, but that's to be expected. And you were hearing some things that, if you've been in politics, would legitimately frighten you. However, the ground game improved exponentially every day by leaps and bounds. And in the end, I think we had a better ground game than Harris. And that's saying something because, folks, I know a lot of you are Republicans, loyal conservative Republicans. If we had half the ground game in every state that the Democrats have, we wouldn't lose any elections. Any local, state, federal. The Democrats have so much money. They had $1 billion compared to Donald Trump's $400 million. They had a much more robust ground game. But in the end, our ground game beat them because we were better. We were far more smart about it. We were far more passionate, and we were true believers. And true believers will beat these paid bots every time, whether it's in the field, knocking on doors, on the phone, in person. We were right on the issues, and the ground game was amazing in almost every state. Again, it seems like the Harris campaign was lethargic. They saw this rough start in the beginning for the Trump ground game, and they're like, "Oh, we'll overwhelm them on turnout." No. We made amazing strides, and you hear certain people, but this was a team effort. There are so many people, unheralded heroes, in every state, and we talked about this in another episode, where people who had never gotten involved in politics, who would shy away from it, started getting online. On social media, started talking to their coworkers about this stuff because they realized that this was the most important election in the history of America. At the risk of, I think Western civilization was at stake here, based on what they were planning. And kudos to the Trump team for obviously being strong supporters of Israel, but also making outreach to Muslim voters. And we saw the fruits of that effort in Dearborn, Michigan, because we have to understand there's not just one issue that people care about. Show me voters who don't care about safety, education, about financial prosperity, and we just have to stop. Have to stop being afraid. And I think the Harris campaign was caught off guard by. We spoke about this in private about turnout in Fulton County in Georgia. It was huge, but guess what? The turnout in rural communities in Georgia was unprecedented. And from what I understand, the urban turnout in Atlanta metro area was frightening for Republicans in the morning. But guess what? The rural counties was formidable in the morning, and it didn't stop in the morning. Late morning, early afternoon, early evening, people were staying in line. People who had never voted before came out. And that's a testament to the strength of the Trump ground game. And, you heard their field director, their political director. Terrific effort.
Nick, let me ask you this. You know the saying, of course, about the sausage factory, right? What's under the hood of the American election system, etc., etc. And some people get disappointed when they learn about the shenanigans that are done, behind the curtain, and the ballot harvesting at the senior homes and hospices. It's that level of depravity that is sometimes exposed, but most of the time it is not. So, what do you think? Telling more about those falsifications behind the curtain, is it kind of beneficial for the results to seeing the truth, whatever it may be? But because when people read about all this, and a lot of people are disappointed, and they were up to last minute, they will trick us. Don't worry about it. We never win. We will never win. They have it all. They falsified. They have the dominions. They have their smartmatics. They have this and that, and the disappearing ink and stuff like that. So, what do you think in general? Is it advisable to kind of spread the idea of so-called the truth?
Well, I am not alleging any cheating in 2020. I have no direct evidence of any cheating in 2020 or any attempts at cheating in 2024. As I've said before, I think it's certainly fair to ask questions about what happened in 2020. And what we had to do this time, not that anything was ever rigged or was going to be rigged, we had to make it too big to rig. And I spoke about this and others spoke about this. I told Democrats, and I wish I could have maybe, been more jocular and joking, but I said, guess what? It doesn't matter if you tell us about burst pipes this time, water main breaks, gas leaks, nuclear missiles if you want. Republican poll watchers aren't leaving these sites tonight or ever. And we had lawyers on the ground in every state. A friend of mine in New York was going from polling site to polling site. And actually, one friend of mine who was also going from polling site to polling site upstate almost had a physical altercation with a bunch of Democrat operatives. I don't want to get into the details right now, but I was so proud of her because she stood up to these people. They think that it's business as usual. That what do you mean we're not allowed to do this? No, you're not allowed to do this. We're following the law. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking you to follow the law. And this time, and I think we all have to give a huge round of applause and be grateful for Laura Trump and Michael Whatley at the RNC. I mean, wow. I myself in the beginning was like, were they going to be able to make the transition in time? It's so late in the game, but they were breaths of fresh air, power. They did an incredible job.
The result was outstanding. They built the organization no one could believe they could build.
Yes. And the super PACs were incredible too. Turning Point. But and a lot of people give those organizations credit. But we've got to give credit where credit is due. The RNC did an amazing job.
Yeah. Time to get to the Brooklyn Republican Party, which escaped unscathed by attempts to become more active, but we're getting in trouble here, I guess.
Yuri, don't bait me because you know that I'll need to beg you, and you won't be able to give it to me because you have a busy schedule. I'm going to start begging you for another 2 hours to talk about this. I am. So it's funny. Someone asked me a question about, and then I'd like to just go back to the national stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But someone asked me about the congressional losses in New York and the terrible results on Proposition 1. And I just like to
No,
I just like to,
everybody left us. Let me tell you how it looked from where I was during the elections. A lot of people left it blank. They cannot get a sufficient explanation of what it all means. It required extensive homework to learn about it, the nuts and bolts of it. Some people were very well informed, and that mostly the Chinese community, Chinese American community. They went. My rule of thumb was no to everything. I don't trust the way this city council. We have good people there, of course, but in general, it's very disbalanced, and there are crazy people in there. So you don't trust your kid to crazy people, and this country's our kid.
um,
The city's our kid.
so I really didn't think I was going to talk about any of this on your show, but may as well.
We can handle it.
Well, you can handle it, but every time I talk about this, I get banned from shows, and people in Republican circles in New York State get very cross and upset with me. Certain people.
Yeah, you may look they're banned from this show too, but they're not banned here. They just don't come.
Well, yeah, because
You want to
they
reach out to the pretty solid Republican, dense Republican community of Russian-speaking Americans.
there is no reason why we got crushed, why we should have been crushed on Proposition 1, first of all. There is absolutely no reason. And part of the reason we got, but part of the reason we did get crushed on Proposition 1 is because of the infighting, is because we did not raise nearly enough money to fight this. And we're in New York State. We donate to the rest of the country by so many millions of dollars. But there's this usual, and we're not going to say names, but there's this usual cast of characters who treat this like a monopoly. And that's a very generous term, but they treat this like a monopoly. They don't like to get other people involved. They started raising money for this in October and putting up some advertisements. That was very short-sighted, very misguided. God bless the big donors who came in at any time, even if they came in the day before. It would have been great to let everybody know in August, look, this is what we're dealing with. This is a terrible, terrible amendment.
What was it about? Tell me. What did we just?
So basically, it was under the guise of protecting abortion rights, but it's so broadly worded that it may very well lead to non-citizen voting in New York. So this was Plan B in case the courts overrule them on passing non-citizen voting. So with this proposition, basically, you can make an argument that illegal aliens are allowed to vote in municipal elections, which will be disastrous for New York. According to the language, transgenders may have a right to, no matter what, to join women's sports, biological males in women's sports. This may be codified under the law, depending on your interpretation. There are people who respectfully disagree with them, and I respect their dissenting viewpoint. There's also, according to the language in Proposition 1, that children can have gender transitioning surgery without their parents' permission. So this was a nightmare bill, nightmare proposition, and we dropped the ball again. And I'm sorry, but there's not one person to blame for this. And I don't want to seem too harsh, but in New York, we need to be more like President Trump. We need to be bold. You want to move out of New York? I don't blame you. You want to move to New York? I don't blame you either. But if you want to be a conservative Republican in New York, advancing conservative Republican ideas, we need more people involved at every level, because I don't understand how Donald Trump improved his performance in New York by so much, yet we're struggling. We lost 3 congressional seats. And I don't want to hear these convoluted explanations. We lost 3 congressional seats because, among other reasons, we don't put up fights in most of the other congressional districts. On the local level, there's a lot of deal making. There's a lot of so-called non-aggression pacts where we don't put up serious candidates. We don't put up a serious effort. And what happens? You say, oh, well, we want to preserve our resources and focus on 1 or 2 or 3 races that are winnable. Nonsense. Once you don't have competitive races across the state, the Democrats' resources in New York are vast, huge. So what's going to happen? If they know that these are the only 2 or 3 or 4 races that are competitive, they will swamp these races. We lost 3 very fine congressmen in New York. And the effort to help these folks, again, it was not the only reason they lost. It was not the specific reason they lost, but we owed more to them. We owed more to the country to have more resources available, and we need to start recruiting better candidates. I don't care if the race is not winnable. If a race is not winnable, if you're going to run some crackpot nutcase conspiracy theorist that's just embarrassing, don't run them at all. The game is not to run a candidate in every seat. That doesn't matter. The point is run serious people who account themselves well, who are good spokespeople for our ideas. And that way, once you make competitive races, you won't have them swamping these vulnerable Republicans. There was, and I don't want to get too specific because they're going to know who I'm talking about, but there was a race where the incumbent should have
Donald
had.
Trump is the president. Don't be afraid.
Well,
our guys in the White House. What are you afraid of?
It's not afraid.
You know
I
what
don't
you're
want
afraid
to
of. Okay.
I don't want to get into the weeds.
Just kidding. Yeah.
There's
kidding, Nick. Listen.
There's not just one. There's a lot of races, but one that comes to mind, right? In the beginning of this in January, this was a race that should have been absolutely competitive. Great candidate. Of course, I don't know why, but they were swamped by these, the usual suspects. And this went from a race that I thought if the candidate did nothing, they'd get 40% of the vote. Literally, if they did nothing to get 40% of the vote, where the incumbent, who's a Democrat, was so comfortable at the end that she didn't campaign in her district. She actually went in other parts of the state to campaign for other Democrats. Some of them won, some of them lost. But we've reached the point where we should not have any Democrats who are running for re-election would have the time to go help other Democrats win. That is an insult. So, and then there wasn't just one instance of that. There were several Democrat incumbents, congressional representatives, state Senate representatives, assembly representatives, just ignoring their district, not worrying about re-election, and campaigning for Democrats. That needs to change in New York. We have to start focusing on fundraising and spending the money. Take a look at where your money goes. If organizations are raising money, why aren't they spending it on candidates? So, that's why we need to look more carefully. We need to have more serious people getting involved. And we have to fight. We have to look, you have to take Donald Trump's example. Be bold. We haven't done so well in New York City on the Republican ticket since 1988, I think. That is amazing. And that is a repudiation of, if I have to hear, oh, the neighborhood has changed, oh, the community has changed, one more time, give me a break. Like as if your desire to have safe streets, good schools, clean water, good jobs, as if that relies on your geography. That's nonsense. So I really think we need to start having these conversations. I'm not singling anybody out, but we owe to New Yorkers to do so much better than we are right now.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, we have to become more interesting. I started live events, not depending on myself, but on interesting speakers that I could invite for the people who are interested in our ideas and the future of the mankind, basically, as we represent it. Before we finish, Nick, I would like just to correct you on one thing. You said fight. We know that Kamala Harris steals stuff from Donald Trump, right? She's like, well, he's not looking. He's trying to steal here and there. She was trying, yeah, to steal here and there, but she stole the word "fight" from him. So to distinguish
Democrats,
Kamala Harris, let me finish. To steal from her. Let me finish. So, to distinguish Kamala's fight from Trump's fight, you got to say fight, fight, fight 3 times.
fight, fight, fight.
Then we know which fight you mean.
Absolutely. And now going back to the national, if we have a little bit of time,
Sure.
And I'm sorry if I got off on a tangent with the New York stuff, but folks, there's so much room to grow the Republican and conservative parties in New York. We have the solutions. We have the people. It's time to believe in ourselves and not just compromise so much in terms of what we can do. Proposition 1, its overwhelming passage is certainly a setback, but we need to learn from it. And hopefully we're much more unified next year. We need to believe in winning. I mean, look at Elise Stefanik and Lee Zeldin, who were amazing, not just for New York candidates, which they were instrumental, but they crisscrossed the country. And, I think Elise Stefanik played an outsized role in he's soon to be Senator-elect McCormick winning in Pennsylvania. And it's funny how these outlets refuse to call the race. What are they waiting for? So a bit of good news, more good news from Pennsylvania. I think David McCormick pulled it out, and I'm happy to see Bob Casey go. I think many people are.
That's a big thing.
One thing Elon Musk said that I don't know if I understood it properly, but he made a point that, in 2016, President Trump's margin was not that huge. And that the Democrats won't be able to stifle his agenda, that they won't even try. Again, maybe I misconstrued his remarks. Maybe he was saying them tongue in cheek. I think the Democrats had their plan of attack weeks before the election, and we better be prepared for major obstruction. Remember, these are the same people who impeached President Trump on a phone call, whose transcript was publicly available. And I've read it so many times, almost trying to find a way where I could say, okay, there's some way to look at this incorrectly, but that would provide you some kind of a basis for starting impeachment proceedings, but it's ridiculous. So folks, keep in mind, these are the same people that started impeachment over a perfectly fine run-of-the-mill phone call that a president of the United States would have with the leader of a foreign country, one that was listened into by dozens of people possibly. And they tried to destroy this man based on that conversation. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about propriety. They don't care about fairness. I think what I would think is very important for President Trump to act on immediately. There is no time. 4 years will fly. After the damage done by the Biden-Harris administration, not just on economic issues, but on social issues and cultural issues, but particularly the economy, 4 years is possibly not, even with President Trump at the helm, I don't know, 4 years, I wish we had, he needs to move quickly, and the administration has to be undaunted by the nonsense. There are going to be investigations. There's going to be shrieks and howls of outrage, but he needs to move quickly via executive order on 3 things. The first thing is energy. Inflation is crushing this country. You probably saw this. You may have seen it. A lot of other people saw it. This woman talking about how she had to ration bacon to her children, breakfast to her children. She was asking people, family, to give her supermarket gift cards for Christmas. And just 4 years before, they were doing amazing under President Trump. This is obviously one of many, many stories. The first thing President Trump needs to do is the Keystone Pipeline, get it back on track. He needs to deregulate the energy sector via every possible executive order that would influence that. Once you get fuel prices down in this country, once you get energy prices down in this country, inflation will go down immediately. So I think you need to do that. Secondly, obviously, is immigration. People don't feel safe. You know, talking about occupying.
This all should be done at once. Order one, order two, this, order three, that. I think Donald Trump, our side learns from our mistakes better than the other side. They don't think they made mistake in the first place. And I call for people to celebrate for some time, because we won. And just give yourself a little bit, let us do the talking, and you celebrate. I see people reporting they have a bottle of red and bottle of white, and please keep it handy and have fun, because we won and we have joy on our sleeve. Joy, we won. Joy is ours. Fight is ours. We won this fist symbol. It's ours. I don't want to go any further with the gesturing publicly, but that's the fact. And I think that we have so far we have a certain advantage, a moral advantage, which is very important, because we won and our spirits are high, and we trust that the campaign is moving at the speed required to accomplish everything that we think should be accomplished.
Well, to that point, and I thank you for making the point, and you're absolutely right. We need to enjoy this. It was a long time coming, and a lot of people's lives were upended by this terrible administration. And it was a huge struggle, and we won this election fair and square. I cannot emphasize enough that it can't be just President Trump, because look what happened in 2017. You had Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell obstructing every step of the way. So certainly I don't think we're going to have that problem with Speaker Johnson this time, but it's very important to get the right Senate Majority Leader in there. And that really concerns me, because 3 of the 4 people that have been mentioned as possible replacements to Mitch McConnell are Ryan.
None of them are good. I suspect.
Thank you for that very diplomatic
intro. I haven't seen the names, but the way you said it.
3 of the 4 are McConnell loyalists. They're McConnell's people. And they do not give me any confidence that they're going to help President Trump advance his agenda. Yeah. These people are influenced in an outsized manner by the Rhino industrial complex, which President Trump tore to shreds. I'm sorry, the Nikki Haley vision of the Republican Party is long gone. I think that settles that question. And we need to move quickly to advance the agenda. Laura Ingraham made a great point on immigration when she was speaking with Speaker Johnson. She said, it can't just be executive orders that are undone after another administration. We need legislation passed. And we do, not just on immigration, but on tax reform, on a number of reforms. We need to get stuff passed. We can't have, let's not forget that an issue that the Democrats tried to boomerang for President Trump was immigration, and that ridiculous amnesty bill that would have let in at least, let me say that at least, because under the provisions, the president had the discretion to let in more illegal aliens. But a Republican senator from Oklahoma, I believe, is the one who sponsored the bill that would have allowed at least 2 million illegal aliens into this country every year. And let's not forget that he's still in the Senate. He gave the Democrats a huge talking point on the campaign trail and tried to muddy the waters. Otherwise, I think this election would have been an even bigger blowout without that bill, without that talking point. So President Trump needs to have a leadership team in the legislature that he can trust, that he can rely on. Otherwise, we're going to be disappointed. And so there's going to be, just like in 2017, the difference is This time we can't take the bait on the latest controversy of the day, right? We can't let them come up with all sorts of hoaxes and accusations. Look, if anyone breaks the law, they should suffer the consequences, right? If someone does something wrong, they should suffer the consequences. No one should be above the law. But we can't keep taking the bait on every idiotic Democrat accusation that they're going to come up with, on every reason to protest. We need to focus. Look, we passed the United States, Mexico, and Canada trade accords during impeachment. That's a great example. We cannot be distracted and delayed because they're not giving up. I'm telling you, they're not going to give up. They will try to stop the President Trump's agenda at any cost. This time we have to be more vigilant and more focused on the actual policy. Policy. Let them do what else they want. I can't imagine what they're up to. But people in this country are suffering. You know, this landslide didn't happen by accident. We need to help Americans. This is a great opportunity to do that. This is a great opportunity for Democrats who want to be bipartisan, who want to work to improve the lives of Americans, to work with Republicans, and that's what we need to focus on.
Yeah, Nick, thank you so very much. The old Democrat hands are in behind the scenes politics are getting older, of course, and young ones are more vicious but less capable, I would think, in terms of cunning and getting to the hearts and minds of American people. So we got smarter, and this is the main result of the analysis of what happened on November 5th this year. Thanks again, Nick, and looking forward to our next meeting, and we'll start working on it right now.
Thank you so much, Yuri. Always a pleasure.
Take care.